Hello, lords and lovelies, and welcome back to the Knights of the Round podcast with Lord Arthur and Lady Ravah, or whatever it is you know us by. There's just monikers at this point.
Hey, no, come on. We got to keep up the personas. Yes, I am Lord Arthur, and she is Lady Ravah, and welcome back.
What is it that TikTok series you like? It's like, oh, villains have to have presentation. That was you just now.
Anybody that's super has to have a presentation, and now I just sound like a braggart. Damn it!
So we wanted to continue our episode on adaptations because we have so much that we wrote about that we talked about. We're like, oh shoot, we gotta.
There's so much that we didn't even touch on, like even some of like the bigger things that we wanted to talk about. Video game adaptations. There's some movies and TV shows and books and comics that we didn't get to. So this one's going to be a little bit more freeform. We're kind of just going to go off and rant on some things and talk about a few things, what we like, what we don't like, what works, what doesn't work. It's going to be a little bit more freestyle than our previous installments.
It's like the Knights of the Round podcast, the extended director's cut. But it's also 3 hours shorter than the Lord of the Rings extended director's cut. So
we're going to watch one of these days. We're going to just set up like a couple of days. We're going to grab some popcorn and just go.
You act like I haven't already seen all of the director's cuts.
But we haven't seen them together.
Okay.
Oh, no, you did not. Okay, so let's, you want to just come out guns blazing and talk about the one that I think you and I have the most to talk about?
Yeah, we're going to fight.
We're going to fucking fight. All right, so we're going to talk real quick about a franchise that's near and dear to my heart. And that
it's a franchise that I don't care about even a little bit.
We're going to talk about Warcraft. And specifically, we're going to talk about the Warcraft movie that came out a couple of years back.
Yeah, so Arthur and I actually did go see this together.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who I went to see it with else at the time, because I know it wasn't just the two of us, but it was me and two fans of Warcraft. And
I don't remember.
I just know because I know you and that person were talking about Warcraft stuff. And I walked out of that movie thinking, I don't really understand what just happened other than they killed off the best character of the movie. And it was kind of terrible.
I would say that it's not great. However,
it's not even good.
As far as video game adaptations, video game movies go, it's not horrible. It is a pretty fairly standard, romp as far as video. Because to be honest, that was the best video game movie to ever get released until Detective Pikachu and Sonic.
I don't know. I would disagree.
What's his competition? Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Super Mario Bros.
Like, I don't know if I've ever seen Super Mario Bros. But anyway,
you're not missing a lot.
Anyway, I don't know, because Warcraft was created for a group of people 10 years after the height of the popularity of the Warcraft franchise.
You're not wrong.
And that was its target audience. And I guess that's fine. But then what Warcraft did is it alienated half or more than half of the movie-going population by making no sense if you were not a fan of Warcraft and you don't know the lore of the franchise.
I wouldn't say that it alienated them. I would say that it certainly didn't answer all the questions that it needed to because it presumed too much of the general public. You're entirely right. The target audience, the people who would enjoy that the most, is not your average movie-going viewer. It is your fan of World of Warcraft or the Warcraft franchise because it tells the tale of a 20-something-year-old video game. It is Blizzard's first ever work, Warcraft 1. That is the story being told. Not only that, but the lore that wouldn't be written until much after Warcraft 1 was released. It is a convoluted mess of stories that were adapted mostly faithfully into a format that requires more subtlety than the sledgehammer that they gave. We talked about in our previous parts that to make a good adaptation, you have to be faithful to the intent and the meanings and the messages of the original source material. The original source material in this case was a strategy game that was released in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s. There's not much in the way of characterization in that game. And while they got the story pretty close to accurate, they also presumed too much. And they played the pronoun game a lot. Like, most of the people watching don't know who Medivh is or why he's so important, or Dalaran or why it's so important, or the King of Stormwind and why he's important, or where the fuck Stormwind is. Like, they briefly mentioned Lordaeron, which at the time was the far more important of the two cities.
So I'm just gonna cut you off there. I saw the movie, and all of those words that you said could be complete and utter nonsense. You could tell me anything you wanted to about that movie, and I'd probably agree with you because it was very forgettable, very unmemorable because it was a convoluted mess. And I don't know if that's the lore of Warcraft's fault or if that's the fault of the movie, but it made no sense. I don't remember who any other than the main orc guy whose name I don't even remember. I just remember that, he was the most interesting character in the actual movie. I don't remember who any of the characters are. Half of the humans, all of them look the same. So the fact that they're like, oh well, this one human wizard guy or whatever he was, I don't even know. He looks just like all the other humans in this movie, so let's make him evil so we can tell him apart from the other dark-haired, dark-eyed, generic
Wizard.
white or perhaps slightly ethnic male characters in this movie. Oh, and there's the one female orc lady. I remember her not for any particular reason other than the fact that she is the girl.
She is the girl orc. And she's not even really a girl orc. She's like a half-breed, but that's neither here nor there. Question, because if I started asking you about Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings, you would absolutely tell me what is so important about Rivendell and Elrond and Legolas and Minas Morgul and all these other proper nouns and names and people. So what did Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings do right that makes you understand who Rohan and Gondor and the Shire and all these other places and why Aragorn and Faramir and all these other people and places are important? But Warcraft absolutely left you going, I don't know what the fuck is going on.
I'm going to be honest, it had 3 movies and 3 books and more detailed lore and source material to pull from than Warcraft did. It had 3 movies to draw out everything. And no, when the first movie came out in 2001. Mm-hmm. So I was in like 5th or 6th grade. I had not read The Fellowship of the Ring at that point, but I still understood the story. I didn't know what Rohan was. I didn't know really what Gondor was. But it had 3 movies to build up to that. And it kind of sprinkled those in so that it built those up. It also chooses almost a set of characters, the Fellowship, and it focuses on them. And yeah, you do lose a member of the Fellowship, but it doesn't then switch narratives to focusing on a different person. It's like, well, yeah, we don't have Boromir anymore, but we still are going to focus on Frodo and Sam. We're still going to focus on Aragorn and the rest of the Fellowship.
Let's say the Golden Trio: Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas.
Right, and
and then Merry and Pippin are off in the woods getting high with Treebeard.
Well, Wait, that's what hobbits do.
Yeah, that's what hobbits do.
What Tolkien does is Tolkien builds a world. There's a joke I saw that said Tolkien just wrote Lord of the Rings because he wanted to invent his own language, and so he had to invent a world around this language that he created. I don't know if that's true. I just think it's kind of funny. But the lore that the Lord of the Rings trilogy in that comparison is based on is much more fleshed out than the one that Warcraft was based on.
I could totally agree with that. In fact, it's almost unfair to compare most modern fantasy to Lord of the Rings or
But you started it. You made this comparison.
Let me finish. Because Middle-earth and the tales from J.R.R. Tolkien are wholly unique in that Tolkien didn't like to refer to himself as the creator of the Lord of the Rings. He liked to imagine it that he found the history of a world and he was simply interpreting it and delivering it to the rest of us. And that's how he viewed himself, is that he created the world and the history, and then he wrote the books around the history. Warcraft created the games and then filled the spaces where we had questions with extra lore after the fact. So they kind of came at it from 2 different sides and got 2 different results. But as a massive WoW lore, enthusiast like I am, uh, the implications and the importance of these different places, I already had that pre-established summer reading done. I think just in terms of what was on screen, it's not necessarily the quality of the source material that's the problem, it's how it's presented. So, like you said, when we follow the adventures of Gandalf and the Fellowship and Frodo and the rest of them, we're at the Shire, and then we're at Bree, and then we're at Rivendell, and you can very much easily, literally, draw a line on a map where they're going, and it's not until the very end of the Fellowship of the Ring where the Fellowship has now split up, and now Sam and Frodo are off doing their own thing, Merry and Pippin are off doing their own thing, and the rest of them are off doing their own thing. But you follow the whole group as they centered around one specific character, Frodo, as they go from point A to point Z in the narrative. In the Warcraft movie, they're so afraid of you, quote unquote, not knowing what's going on that they jump from the human guy to the female orc to the evil orc to the human wizard to these guys over here to the back. And at that point, you're like, I have no idea where I am, what's going on, why is this happening, who are these people? It's information overload. That's the problem.
Right. It's like they don't go from point A to point Z with different things in between. They go from point A to 1 to ampersand to enter, and none of it seems like it's on the same keyboard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going. I don't think I can judge if it's a good adaptation. I've only ever played 30 minutes of World of Warcraft. But what I can say is, from an outsider's perspective, it wasn't a good film. I shouldn't have to do summer reading to be able to go in and watch a film that's not a sequel, that's not a prequel or, anything like that. Like, of course, you would need to go do your summer reading to watch something like Infinity War. But to watch this standalone movie, you shouldn't need to. It's a bad money-making strategy to create a movie that if you don't understand the games, you don't know what's happening in the movie.
And arguably, I'd even say that with Infinity War, more or less, you can follow along even if you've not watched any of the Marvel movies beforehand. You miss a lot of it, and some things might have to be yada away. But as long as you go into this movie knowing, okay, it's a superhero film, these are superheroes, that's really all you need to know. And then everything else is more or less given a pretty organic, exploration from there. I would argue actually that Endgame is one of those ones that if you have not watched any of the movies beforehand, you will not understand what's going on. But again, it's the finale of a 28 movie, series basically at that point. So yeah, if you came into episode 28 of a 28 series, you're going to be a little fucking lost.
But Warcraft isn't that. It is a standalone movie that it looks like they were setting it up for sequel bait, but I think, from what I understand, it bombed pretty hard at the domestic box office. It might have done better overseas, but here it didn't do
It did pretty decently in China, but that's about it.
But Transformers Age of Extinction did well in China, so that's not a good measure for
right,
films.
Exactly. Honestly, if I could take the reins and if I had the ability to make my own Warcraft movie, I would have picked maybe one or two characters, like important characters. And those two characters would probably be, what you call it? Oh, God, I forget his name. The King of Storm or the Lion, Lothar, I think his name was. See, I'm a
Oh wait, was that a character in the movie? Because that sounds really familiar.
Yeah, Lothar. I know him because I know how he dies in the second war, which would have been the sequel bait, but neither here nor there. I would have picked Lothar and Khadgar, and to all my WoW fans listening in, you would probably know why.
Shout out to the WoW fans in the comments who actually know what he's talking about right now.
So Lothar is he's your Aragorn character. He's your big lunky meathead with a noble destiny that leads the forces of good against the forces of evil. And Khadgar is the Gandalf-ish wizard character who ends up fighting the evil wizard who actually ended up being the twist villain at the end, Medivh. And they're two...
The pretty boy.
The pretty boy who ends up like all demonic and scary and he summons the fucking golem.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you see, now it's coming back to you once I give context to these pronouns. But anyway, proper nouns, whatever. I would have focused on those two characters and those two characters alone. Their narratives interweave immensely. While you're still focusing on them, you still get to know who Garona is. You still get to meet Gul'dan, like these other influential orcs. But let the orcs be like how they were in Lord of the Rings. Let them just be this ominous, approaching, encroaching force, and let the narrative be centered around the good guys. When the original Warcraft came out, there was no telling the orc side of the story until after the fact, when they unleashed the orc expansion pack.
Mhm.
Like it was a whole extra campaign, but the primary campaign of the game was told from the point of view of the humans.
So, okay, so you're talking about Warcraft, not World of Warcraft.
No, so Warcraft was the first game in the franchise, followed by Warcraft 2 and Warcraft 3, and then they each had subsequent
Oh.
expansions, the most famous of which would be Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, which tells the story of Arthas.
So, looking back at what we had established in our last two episodes about what makes a good adaptation, I'm gonna ask you these questions.
All right.
Because I can't speak on if it's a good adaptation. I just personally think it's a shitty movie. So, does it understand the story of the Warcraft universe?
I would say that yes, it does understand the story, the importance, and the plot of the Warcraft universe.
Which actually brings up a good topic, but I'm going to come back to that later. Does it know the theme or the message of this? Does it convey those themes from the game adequately on the screen?
I would argue that yes, it does convey those themes accurately on the screen, because once you actually get into the story, it's not about unga bunga evil orcs, nobles, heroic humans. It's like, oh no, they're both basically being played against each other in a game of cosmic chess led by these demonic forces, Gul'dan and Medivh. So it understands and actually goes out of its way to make the orcs very sympathetic. That really heavy-handed Moses metaphor with Thrall, although Thrall is a very Moses-esque character.
Oh, yes. I know some of these words.
The baby orc that the mama orc puts in the basket and puts very heavy Moses imagery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. He comes back later, and he's very important when he does.
So I feel like...
Duratan, that was his name. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Even you forgot the names. No, I feel like Kel in Good Burger right now reading, he goes, I know some of these words. That's you talking to me right now.
So yeah, it understands that it is a complex narrative, that no side is particularly in the right or in the wrong. They're both actually being played by forces beyond their comprehension. I would say that it gets that right.
What about the themes?
So again, the themes aren't very complex. War is bad. That's the theme that really is underlying in the Warcraft trilogy. And it kind of extends a little bit into World of Warcraft as well. But just focusing on the Warcraft trilogy, Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, the main themes really are war is bad, and I would argue that individual characters have themes related to their character arcs, but the story as a whole doesn't have a very complex overarching theme. I would say that Duratan has themes of fatherhood and duty and loyalty, and how do those three things play against each other when your duty to your people puts you in odds to your role as a father and your loyalty to your wife. That Khadgar faces themes of is there such a thing as forbidden knowledge? Is knowledge inherently helpful, or is it a neutral force to be used for good or evil?
Mm-hmm.
There is themes, again, going back to the orcs, the themes of loyalty. Do we listen to this obviously evil guy that doesn't care about us, Gul'dan, or do we forsake our loyalty to the our people in order to preserve our honor? Zuko would know a lot about that. So the individual characters have these really nice character arcs, and then when you get into the later installments with Garrosh Hellscream, it gets even better. You know, the sins of the father passed on to the son. You get the very heavy-handed, like I said, Moses and eventually Jesus metaphors with Thrall, and the lessons that he learned from Doomhammer and going back to Nagrand and learning about his people. And these are again all names that you certainly don't know about.
You know, I stopped listening.
I did. I saw you.
I'm just letting you get this out of your system.
So it's complicated in the fact that they created characters that have powerful themes and storylines, but the storyline of the games are comically simple of war bad stab things. There you go.
I guess so. I guess you could say like that's also a product of MMOs from that time, because how complicated is the story in RuneScape?
I mean, technically, there is no overarching. The only thing close to like a quote unquote story I could think of in RuneScape is that the ongoing conflict between the gods.
Is that the story of the game?
I'm thinking it because they're like the only like quests that have any kind of connection to each other are the ones that have to do with the gods. Like every other quest is just like a random quest, like find my chickens. But any quest that actually references events happening has to do with the gods. And then like the God Wars was like a prominent event in RuneScape lore. And then I don't have any idea about like modern RuneScape, because apparently like some big lore thing happened between the RuneScape that you and I played back in middle school and the RuneScape that is currently available to play. Like there was like a big event between the blue god and the red god. I completely forget their names. Like Saradonin and Serac or something like that. The blue god and the red god, and I think the green god Golthius, I don't know, gets killed.
Groudon and Kyogre and Rayquaza.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's we're gonna give it.
Look at my man knowing some of that RuneScape lore.
But again, that's about like the broadest strokes that I know about RuneScape lore.
That is literally 50 times more lore than I ever knew about this game, and I played it religiously for years. I think that's hilarious. So
you had a RuneScape boyfriend.
Did I? Yes, I did. I had several actually. You so rude. So go back to your movie. Is Warcraft a good adaptation?
Is it a good adaptation? I would say it's an okay adaptation.
Okay.
Is it a good movie? No.
No. He admitted it, and we now have it in recording. And I'm going to cut this snippet out of the podcast, and I'm just going to play it back.
Did I enjoy the movie? Yes, I enjoyed the movie.
Okay, that's fair. And you can enjoy movies that aren't great.
It's my guilty pleasure. I'll put it like that. It's my guilty pleasure.
Mystery Men is my guilty pleasure. But
Mystery Men is legitimately hilarious. I will not hear it slandered.
So let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about something that I didn't think would be a polarizing thing in the gaming community, but apparently it is. And it's that people are shitting on the Mortal Kombat movie, the new one, and saying that Mortal Kombat Annihilation is no longer the worst Mortal Kombat movie.
Bro, either you've never actually seen Mortal Kombat Annihilation, or you're fucking high. Yeah. No, let's just get the cat out of the bag. Mortal Kombat Annihilation is the worst period Mortal Kombat movie that has ever existed or ever will exist. And I'm sure I will not
don't speak that into the universe, because then they might be like, all right,
he said
it. Now we got to make an even worse Mortal Kombat movie. It is the worst one to date.
It is the worst one to date. Okay, then I'll reprimand it to it is the worst one to date. But the primary complaints I've seen about the new Mortal Kombat is that it creates this new character, Cole Young, and then it focuses on him. But honestly, unless you want to go the Warcraft route, that's what you need to do. You need to pick a single character and focus on that single character. And I'll be honest, audiences are really fucking tired of the chosen one cliche. Audiences,
so doing like a focusing on Liu Kang, which most of the original games did, sort of.
He is, I know, the original
He's the closest thing that the original games have to a main character.
Yeah, exactly. And the only reason why he's the closest thing that they had to a main character is that his quote unquote victory box is the one that they used as the actual storyline continuing between Mortal Kombat's 1, 2, and 3. Everybody, others were like, quote, like what if scenarios, like what if Sonya Blade won? That's not the story we're going with. Liu Kang won actually, but what if in their whole like tower match setup? But so yeah, audiences are tired of the chosen one cliche. They are. We've had our fields of Luke Skywalkers and Harry Potters, and I think the movie even calls out as Kung Lao literally makes fun of Liu Kang for being the chosen one. And I know that he's actually started doing that in some of the more recent games here as well. Actually, one of my favorite lines from Mortal Kombat 11 is where Liu Kang, like, no, it's not 11. I think it was 9. Damn it, I don't even forget. But
it is some number. It was after 6. Let's say that
it was a recent Mortal Kombat game where Kung Lao and Liu Kang meet Kitana, and she's like, "I am the princess of Outworld," and Kung Lao literally leans over to Liu Kang and goes, "Hey, bro, I think she's a little out of your league."
But so, is Mortal Kombat 2021 a good adaptation?
I would argue. I would say that it is an okay adaptation. Again, it doesn't have a lot of source material to really work with
because until recently the games haven't really been very lore or story heavy.
Yeah, no, not at all.
The original games was just pick a variation of this ninja guy in the color that you like and push buttons and fight him against another
ninja guy in a different color. Yeah, exactly. So the original games, and it seems like it was quote unquote going after the plot of Warcraft, damn it, Mortal Kombat 1, but it totally did it in a unique situation, and with some of the more recent Mortal Kombat games actually showing us that the Mortal Kombat multiverse exists and that technically all worlds are canon in some way or another. Actually sets this up as like, yeah, this could totally be a legitimate universe. We don't have to one for one recreate the events of the games because, again, the original games don't have a lot of story or character growth or meaningful action or anything that needs to exist for there to be a good movie. Having it focused on a guy thrust into this unknown world, which allows viewers who aren't familiar with the Warcraft, god damn it, with the Mortal Kombat universe, it allows for viewers who are not familiar with the Mortal Kombat universe to experience it through Cole Young's eyes. Yeah, if you're a hardcore Mortal Kombat veteran and you know how all the different realms play against each other and all the intricate machinations of Shang Tsung and Quan Chi and Shao Kahn's politics play against Raiden and the Elder God, you could name all the Elder Gods and their favorite fucking lunches. Cool, that's great. Your average moviegoer fucking can't, though. And so having the protagonist being a person who has no idea what's going on is the way to go if you want the majority of your audience to not be like you with Warcraft. So it's like, hey, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Here's basically what we know so far. Go fucking punch that guy.
Well, and it's a money-making thing, and I'll bet you Mortal Kombat made more money than Warcraft because
tons.
It does that cliche of let's have a character that doesn't know anything, so the audience can start viewing the events through their eyes. Actually, one of my favorite parts of the new Mortal Kombat, and this is something that a lot of people don't like, is that it's the how they do the power sets. Like, oh, you basically unlock your super special awesome power. I actually like that because I'm thinking they're making Mortal Kombat into a more realistic world. Yeah. So how is somebody like Sonya Blade, who is a regular ass woman, going to fight against Shang Tsung, Devourer of Souls?
Right.
And I was like, that's realistically that's no way. Happen. It's like you wouldn't say, "Hey, Happy, can you go fight Thanos for us?" Like, no.
Happy's not beating the shit out of Loki. It's not happening.
But
and like literally in the games, they show these like super strong, crazy, alien creatures just bulldozing through like people with just regular Joe Blow soldiers with machine guns like they're fucking Skittles.
And it does what I said. It takes some creative liberty with it, but I think it does it in a good way to make it seem more like, oh, okay, well now Sonya and Kano can fight against these otherworldly entities that are, essentially demons from Outworld and from other worlds, and it puts them on a more level playing field.
Oh, absolutely it does. And it also explains things like, why can Kano just shoot a laser out of his eye whenever he wants, other than being like, oh, it's technology. It's like, really? It's technology?
Blah, 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 the technobabble.
Like, you're going to technobabble a fucking eye patch that shoots goddamn lasers? Okay, buddy.
Cue the Mortal Kombat fans in the comments going, actually, this is how he gets his laser. I don't know how Kano gets his laser. I'm very sorry.
They don't really care to explain it. They blah, 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 the technobabble. I don't even think that they technobabble it. I think they just blah, blah, blah it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Sonya can like shoot purple projectiles out of her wrists. Johnny Cage has green ectoplasm that appears around his body that he can throw or kick people with. Like, having like this inner power up, like if you like touch into your inner being and your inner soul, that's not an out there concept, especially in modern day when we have a lot of access to Eastern media like Dragon Ball, where you pull out your inner ki. I
would think even a better example would be, we have superhero movies where people are popping up all the time, like, hey, this person is a superhero, or you've got the DC world where even in the popular movies, you have the meta-humans. It's not an out there concept for modern audience just to say, oh, well, this is how they develop their superpower.
Yeah, that was that. And considering that Mortal Kombat has always been steeped in Eastern tradition in its storytelling, I mean, that's why I went with a more Eastern route. Just a thought. They kind of go the Yu Yu Hakusho route, where everybody, when they manifest their powers, it manifests differently for that person. Kuwabara gets his spirit sword. Yusuke gets a projectile he could shoot out of his fingers. Kurama has his whips. Hiei can control flames. Like, everybody, they all quote unquote use the same energy source, but they manifest differently per the person that's actually manifesting it.
And I do think that was that was a nice change to the lore that doesn't distract from the overall story. Because again, the basic, when you boil it down, the basic story of Mortal Kombat is pretty simple. It's you win the tournament. It's guys punching each other until somebody wins the tournament. I mean, it's pretty simple, and it also gives you some reign to do a bunch of different things. And I do know the story gets more complex. I played a lot of the Mortal Kombat games as a kid. I haven't played a lot of the new ones. Deadly Alliance is actually probably the last one I played through, because I played through it a lot as a kid, but I haven't had a system to play it on. I never had a PlayStation 2. I never had an Xbox. I never had PS4. And until recently, I didn't have any of that, so I didn't have a way to play them.
I played Mortal Kombat 1 and 2, never beat the final tower. I got my ass kicked in Mortal Kombat 3. Never got past like the second fight on the tower, because I'm absolute verified trash at Mortal Kombat 3. I've played Deadly Alliance. I've played Armageddon. Shaolin Monks, Deception. Which Deception was really fun. I used to play hours of that game. And I played 9 and 11. I've not actually played. I've watched a playthrough of 10, but I've not played 10. But I've got 11 over there, including the DLC. But yeah, no, like once time travel gets introduced in Mortal Kombat 9, the fucking story just gets all kinds of crazy.
But I mean, we're not at there in the movies as far as it goes. And one of the other things that I like about the film is you can tell that this film, unlike a lot of these other ones, it was actually made by people who know the games.
Yeah.
There are things in it to where if you know the game, it enhances your experience. But if you don't know the game, it doesn't take away from it.
Just to jump in real quick, because Warcraft to me is the same way. If you know the games, then you have an enhanced experience of it. However, going back to what I said, Warcraft had 7 characters in 7 locations that it kept jumping between, so you actually never had a chance to figure out where the fuck things are and where the fuck all this is happening. There was actually several points in the movie I was watching. I was like, that's Elwyn Forest. That's Red Ridge Mountain. That's the Swamp of Sorrows. That's like, I could visually identify the zones of the world from the scenes in the movie, and I was like, I know exactly where you fucking are because I've played the fucking game. But Mortal Kombat doesn't have to worry about that because
No.
like here's our character. It is Cole Young. Where he goes, the camera goes. The end. And then occasionally we'll pop into the Legion of Doom and see Shang Tsung twirl his fucking mustache and go, "Meh, meh, meh, meh," and then we'll go right back to the character. And
Right.
just so that you don't forget, like, hey, villain is still out there doing villain things.
But those things you were pointing out about Warcraft are things that I think it's in Mortal Kombat, the things that it puts in from the games that are like, nudges to the audience, they just enhance your experience. Whereas
Right.
some of those things from Warcraft, it would have benefited the audience to know because like you said, you have no idea where things are in relation to each other. It's like, oh, well, the characters know that this area is important, but why does the audience know that this is important? Why should we care? Other than the fact that the movie just says care about this
Right.
because I said so.
And in a certain way, it actually kind of like cracks me up. I was like, why are you going through the Red Ridge Mountains in order to get to the Swamp of Sorrows? You have to go through Duskwood and the Deadwind Pass in order to get to the Swamp of Sorrows. You guys are taking the long way around.
But you have the different moves that you could see, like, oh, that's the bicycle kick, and oh, that's
Yeah.
oh, these are Sub-Zero's moves, and oh, this is Kung Lao's fatality in this game.
Oh yeah, no, when he did the buzzsaw fatality, like I just instinctively covered my nuts. I was like, oh, it's that move. I don't like that move.
But they used it on a female character. It started with her face.
It doesn't matter. Ask any guy who has ever watched the buzzsaw fatality and they'll tell you it doesn't matter.
But it's like, hey gamers, look what we put in the movie. But if you haven't ever seen Mortal Kombat, you're not like, what? I don't get it. You get that, oh, okay, this woman just got her face buzzsawed in half. I can understand that. I can see clearly that means she is dead.
She is a fucking dead bitch. Shifting gears really suddenly, like while we're still on the subject of video game adaptations and to not take up too much time, remind me, we didn't talk about Detective Pikachu yet, have we?
We've not talked about Detective Pikachu or Sonic. We were just kind of saving those for our haphazard, part 3, our director's cut.
All right, cool. So we mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it earlier. I would put Detective Pikachu and Sonic as the best video game movies that have been released to date. And I would even include Mortal Kombat. Detective Pikachu, Mortal Kombat, and Sonic are like the 3 shining beacons of what video game movies can be. Neither one of us have played Detective Pikachu, the game.
No, not the specific game, no.
I've heard some people say that it's not 1-for-1 to the game, but it kind of gets the spirit of it, and that a side off game that really doesn't affect the quote-unquote main story is the smart choice to go for. Because again, you can introduce characters and it doesn't have to be, exact. You can kind of play around with the plot and not a lot of people will care about it. What they did right, though, was they got the world right. They got the Pokemon world right. And we growing up, with Pokemon Red, I think you had Pokemon Blue or Yellow growing
Leaf
up.
Green.
You had Leaf Green was your first one?
Yes.
Okay. I have Red and Yellow.
We were poor. I had a Sega Genesis, and that was literally it until you and I got together. And when I was about 16, my sister bought a Wii.
Okay.
That was about the extent of my gaming experience, other than a PC when I was a child. We didn't have the money for it.
By the time I got Pokemon Red, like Game Boy Color was on the way out, and the DS was starting to show up, or the
Game Boy Advance.
Game Boy Advance. Thank you. So the Pokemon games that we played growing up, like, and we always would imagine, like, what would it be like to live in a world full of Pokemon? It got that on the head. I mean, like, you got the Machamp over there directing traffic. You've got Pokemon all over the place helping a guy in a restaurant do cooking.
You've got terrorists using Pokemon to do terrorism things, which is exactly what Pokemon would be used for if they were real.
I mean, that's basically what Team Aqua and Team Magma and all these other, teams, they're fucking terrorist organizations or criminal organizations that are using Pokemon to commit crimes.
And it also connects to, I think, with the so sorry, I lost my train of thought. But going back to what you said about Detective Pikachu, I can get the premise of the game. It's you have a Pikachu and he wears a hat
and you solve a crime,
and he solves crimes. I mean, it's not
complex
at its core.
Yeah.
Pokemon is a franchise made for children.
Yeah.
And that's always been its target audience, has been kids. Yes, we grow up and we still play the games. I actually have Ultra Sun, I think, or Ultra Moon or something like that.
Sun.
Whatever. I have, that game and I have played it. but again, it's a game made for kids, so it's
Right.
not a difficult franchise, and I think that simplicity allowed
Mhm.
it to, them to tell whatever kind of story they want. They told a little bit more of an adult story
Mhm.
with it, or I also I wanna say adult, maybe a more mature story
Yeah.
than, like, the original Pokemon series, but I think that's fine because Pokemon is such a simple universe that it lends to you can do a lot with different adaptations of it.
So going with the other of that trio, Sonic, which took its established lore, set it on fire, threw it into a canyon, and said, "We're going this way, guys."
Well, I mean, but look at what the fans have done to the franchise. Do you blame them for wanting to do something new and
Look at
different?
what the franchise has done to the franchise. Look, Sonic '06 was the second coming of ET. Like the franchise has been burning itself alive. It's really been the fans that have been trying to keep it alive this entire time because the fans still have demand for it. The character that they created back in the '90s is still incredibly popular. It's a cultural staple. A lot of kids, even today, almost 30 years after its release, can tell you by looking at a picture that's Sonic the Hedgehog. Um, Most of them haven't played the original games, but they can still tell you by looking that that's Sonic the Hedgehog. And I think that the creators of the movie knew that if they tried at all to follow the established lore, have it set on Mobius, that they're absolutely not going to go anywhere good with this. So let's just tell our own fucking story. And so they basically made it a buddy cop movie because buddy cop movies are now all the rage. Zootopia, especially with furries, Zootopia, Detective Pikachu. So they're like, fuck it. It works for the other furries. Let's make Sonic a buddy cop movie.
Why are you listing all the movies you like, Arthur?
Because I don't put me on blast. These are all good movies, and you know it.
Oh, I know they're good movies, but the fact that you mentioned all the furry movies first, I think is hilarious.
But anyways, they did it. They created a unique story that kept Sonic from having to be this established character that we know. He's allowed to be different, and they got like the attitude and the snark and the sass, which really made '90s Sonic who he was, and that's what made Sonic popular.
Well, and they wanted to make a grounded Sonic in the real universe, and you can't do that from the original games because the original games are so cartoony. That's why the Sonic cartoons work because the games are cartoony. But if you want to make a live action version of that, you can't keep it super cartoony because that's literally the opposite of what you're trying to do.
Right.
So they went, I think, the enchanted route, which is what happens if we put Sonic in the real world, and I think they did a really good job with that.
And I'm really glad, if nothing else, that they listened to the fans and reworked the design for the character. And I wonder, did they just rework the model for Sonic, or did they change any of the story around it as well? Because originally they wanted to go for a quote unquote hyper realistic looking Sonic the Hedgehog, and everybody on the internet collectively went, "Ah!"
That was really loud.
I mean, that was the reaction. Everybody was just ready with their torches and pitchforks, like, nah, burn that shit to the fucking ground. It's horrifying. The fucking teeth. Why does he have human teeth? And they went, okay, so the helpful suggestions there. Let's redo all this. So
Well, do you think that lends into making it a good adaptation?
Yeah, because honestly, like making Sonic look super realistic, like you said, it's a very cartoony series. Make him look cartoony. Who framed Roger Rabbit this shit? Like who cares if it's a human character standing next to a cartoon character? We're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog. We don't want to see an actual fucking marsupial running around next to a human being. It's not what we're going for. We're going for Sonic the Hedgehog, the character.
Right. So, do you think? I think Sonic was a good adaptation. It takes the liberties that it needs to, but it also stays faithful to the source material. But again, I think that one of the things that works so well, actually, I'm looking back at my list. Mortal Kombat, Sonic, Detective Pikachu, all of these stem from very simple franchises that enable them to do a lot of different things with it. And I think the reason that films like Warcraft, and I have on my list Assassin's Creed. We didn't really get to talk about that, but I don't really want to talk about it.
I've never seen it.
Oh, okay. So Assassin's Creed is a bad adaptation because you have to do a lot of homework or you won't understand anything, and it's also not great. but they come from these really complex stories.
Yeah.
And they fall apart. The video game adaptations that work are actually seem to be ones that come from simple stories
and tell simple stories
because they're like, well, we can do a lot with this. So
Detective Pikachu, kid's father goes missing. He finds him with the help of a Pikachu. Mortal Kombat, kid gets roped into a death match and learns something about his family along the way. Sonic overcomes his childhood trauma and learns to stop running away. There you go. Like that. Those are those movies in a nutshell. And they, like you said, they come from very simple backgrounds, and because of that, they are allowed to focus on the characters rather than the plot. And maybe at the end of the day, what you really need for a good adaptation to make a good product is to focus on what the people can relate to the most, the characters. Nobody cares how pretty or how faithful to the source material it is if we have no investment in the characters that are actually in the story.
I agree, and I like that. And to kind of wrap things up, as you have said, I like how you pointed that out. He overcomes his childhood trauma. I like that. Let us know in the comments kind of what you think about what we had to say. Are there any adaptations that we didn't mention that you would like to talk about? Do you think our opinions are shitty? Do you think our opinions are great? Let us know in the comments. Give us a like, a follow, and subscribe. Remember, Twice has shown us if you can overcome your mental traumas, you can literally do anything. I'm Ravah. This is Arthur, and the court is adjourned.
Have a good night.